Welcome back to Sooner Surge. As today we have a special guest, Kara Richey with the ticket, covers Arkansas State football. Appreciate you taking some time here on a Tuesday evening, afternoon to join us. Appreciate it, Kara.
Hey, thanks for the invite, guys. Really looking forward to the season opener.
Yeah, talk to us. I know the depth chart was released today for Arkansas State and Oklahoma. They both released the depth charts today. And I noticed some things on there that you had mentioned earlier about, several transfers that are going to get a start on offensive line. Talk to us about a little bit about Arkansas State, some players to maybe watch for and things like that.
Sure. Well, there's a lot because there's just so many new pieces all over this field. And I apologize in advance if I say I don't know a lot as we're talking, because there's a lot about this team that I don't know yet and won't for several weeks. On offense especially, there's just so many new contributors. Obviously, quarterback is the big spot. QB1 is JT Shroud. He's a transfer from Colorado. He wasn't here for spring camp, so we didn't really get to see him go through that. Of course, he did get here this summer and go through off-season workouts and all of fall camp and all of that, but I'm still learning a lot about A-State's quarterback. You look at the offensive line. There are 2 returners on the offensive line, although one of them is at a new position. So you've got 3 different transfers there, 2 from Ole Miss, 1 from Lamar. In the running back room, you do return the top running back in Brian Snead, but there's going to be some guys behind him that get a lot of carries that are new, including Zach Wallace, who's a transfer from UT Martin at wide receiver. I was about to say, I know there's a spot we haven't mentioned yet.
You've also got a situation where you've got a new guy for the slot, which is Syracuse transfer Courtney Jackson. You have a new old face at another wide receiver, which is Corey Rucker. He was here at A-State for his first 2 seasons, went to South Carolina, was mostly hurt there, unfortunately, but now he's back. There is a little bit of continuity at tight end, so there's that. But otherwise, offense is just so many new faces. It's not quite as new on the defense, but there's still some spots there where there's guys I got to learn a lot about, particularly at linebacker and the interior defensive line.
Yeah, and you mentioned Shroud. I know just from reading some things, it was a pretty good quarterback competition from what I've heard going into the season. Obviously, I think you said he was at Colorado, but he also played, I think, at Tennessee or was recruited and started at Tennessee. Just kind of what does he do? Is he just kind of tell us about Shroud a little bit in his game?
Well, I think the thing that gave him the edge in this quarterback race was experience. He got a good battle from redshirt freshman Jackson Daly, who started 1 game last year, and also true freshman Jalen Rayner, who's a really interesting guy to talk about in the future because he's a dual threat guy, and that's something that A-State hasn't had in several years. But with Shroud, I think it's just the overall ability to take care of the game is what gave him the edge. He's not necessarily a guy I would consider to be flashy, although there certainly were some throws in practice that caught my eye. He put a pretty good spin on the deep ball a couple of different times, and that certainly gets your attention. But when you look at Shroud overall, I think he's still working on that comfortability, working on that camaraderie with the receivers, again, as mentioned, because he didn't get to go through spring camp. He was still working on some classes from Colorado. He had to graduate before he could transfer. I do feel like they've kind of made some hay in that aspect of getting on the same page offensively in the past couple weeks of camp. But I feel a lot more comfortable now with Shroud as QB1 than maybe I would have a couple weeks ago, because you could still tell it was a little bit of a work in progress to get the timing and everything down with his wide receivers. But again, not necessarily a flashy guy, but he can make the throws when he needs to.
Yeah, and you mentioned so many new faces and the transfer portal. And I think Brent Venables mentioned it the other day on his coaches show. It's just for Arkansas State and some of these schools and those conferences, it's really affected them, right? With guys either moving on to other schools or just so many new faces. Even at OU has a lot of new faces, and this portal is crazy. And like you said, continuity. Butch Jones obviously can coach football. We all know that. They've had a long line of coaches there at Arkansas State that have been great. So what does Butch Jones need to do, you think, with all this portal, everything going on, to kind of get them back to where they had been?
I mean, The really short and obvious answer is you just got to win more games, but that's like duh. I mean, we know that. One, he's still trying to build through freshmen as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not all portal newcomers. He still brought in somewhere in the neighborhood of we'll say 22 freshmen, both in this 23 class and in the 22 class before it, which was rated really really highly.
Mm-hmm.
But then what he's tried to address is he uses the word competitive depth all the time. You have to have that all over the field. And then also, especially in the trenches, is where he's brought in a lot of transfers as well, where you need an impact player who can go right away. But I think the thing that A State needs to do to get back on track this year, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the depth and the competitive depth, is just to be able to close out games. If you go back and look at last year, one of the reasons it was not ideal, and apologies as I'm sitting outside of A State football practice for the horns and everything driving by, but one of the things that made last year tough is A State was unable to close out games. If you go back and look, there were 8 games last year where A State either entered the fourth quarter with a lead or was able to take the lead at some point in time in the fourth. And they only held on to win 3 of those. So you had 5 games that were close late. And I think OU had a little bit of an issue with this as well. And then down the stretch, you just couldn't hold on. Your offense couldn't make that play to move the chains. Your defense couldn't make that stop to get off the field. So hopefully with addressing this competitive depth, both via the portal and also via, some of the guys that were in the class of 2022 that was so highly touted, hopefully that helps A State be able to finish a little bit stronger, and then you can add to that win total.
Yeah, in your opinion for Arkansas State in 2023, what are going to be the biggest strengths for them and then also the biggest weaknesses for them this season?
I like the skill guys on offense. I feel like there is both a higher level of talent across the starters at both wide receiver and running back than there were last year. There's some real playmaking ability in both of those rooms, but I also feel like those rooms also got deeper. So you add the top tier highlight ability, you add the depth as well. So I really like those rooms, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do this year. I am really concerned about the depth on the interior of the defensive line. You can't have enough of those guys, and that's a position that has been difficult to get via the portal. A-State did bring in a couple of interior defensive linemen from the portal, but they were FCS transfers. Now they're talented guys. They're going to help out. They're going to contribute, but there's just not this massive amount of like 6'3", 300-pound dudes that are walking around ready to play defensive tackle. Like they're not everywhere. They're hard to acquire. If you're going to get them out of high school, they're hard to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
So just the depth there at the interior defensive line, I am nervous. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm knocking on wood for no injuries, but that's a position of concern.
Yeah, I know secondary seems to be pretty. Also, maybe one of the strengths, or at least where they have some guys. I know they have a transfer. Is it from Oklahoma State? Did they get a transfer? They had a guy go to Oklahoma State. Oh, that's right. They lost the guy to Oklahoma State. Yeah, he left. That's right. Yeah. So I know the secondary, but also there's a transfer from Kansas, Gavin Potter, who played at Broken Arrow High School, actually, where I graduated from, and he made a pretty big impact his freshman season there at Kansas. And then, has left and is now at Arkansas State. I know he's not starting. I think he's back up. But have you heard any rumblings at all of Gavin Potter? Is he impressing? Or anything at the linebacker position?
I saw a lot of him this fall because he was out there. He's the Mike with the 2. So he's the captain of that unit of the defense. So he absolutely held his own. I think with Gavin Potter, he's in a situation where starting wise, like he was beat out by Star Willikis. Well, Willikis has been in this program for a couple of years, and he's a Michigan State transfer as well. So he's been at the Power 5 level. So as he continues to get comfortable at A-State, we might see more of Potter along the way. But Butch is really high on Willikis, so we're going to see him out there quite a bit too.
Yeah. Kara, I just have one more question. This one's kind of off football. Austin Reaves. I know he played high school close to Jonesboro there. Is the hype over there just crazy with Austin Reaves? I mean, we're OU fans, so it is as far as OU fans, but I know just being a hometown guy close to there, it's got to be just crazy seeing him do what he's doing.
I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but like I'm driving the bandwagon. I'm so excited about this guy, and And just like I'm not even close to getting tired to reading everybody rave about Austin Reaves, because it's after every Team USA performance, he's
Yeah.
trending on Twitter. Everybody is stoked. They're sharing highlights, Captain America, all of this.
Mhm.
The people in the Philippines love him, man. Have you
Yeah.
seen the video? He walks out on stage and like everybody loses their mind. It's
Yeah. It's
awesome.
great.
Yeah, but I saw Reaves play for the first time when he was a freshman, and at that point in time, I think if somebody had walked up to me and said, "Hey, you know, this guy is going to be a Laker someday. He's going to be in the NBA. He's going to be on Team USA. He's going to be making headlines," I probably would have maybe laughed in their face. You know, as a freshman in high school, he hadn't had that growth spurt yet. He hadn't, physically, he looked like somebody could, sneeze on him and knock him over
Yeah.
practically. But obviously, he was somebody that everybody doubted throughout his entire career. He just continued to get better. The kind of I have arrived moment for Austin Reaves, or I'm him moment for Austin Reaves, when he was in Northeast Arkansas. There's this basketball tournament that's gone on for about 75 years now. It's the NEA Invitational Tournament. And his team, Cedar Ridge, was in the upper division, but they were one of the smaller schools in the upper division. And he was just a one-man show throughout 4 games, continually, like, single-handedly knocked off schools that would have been more higher profile, bigger talent, more guys on the roster. And it was an unreal performance. And after that, still, he didn't really get any offers. He had an offer from A-State. He ultimately went to Wichita State for a couple years before he made it to OU. But we could have done the entire podcast about Austin Reaves and then done another one about A-State. I would have been completely content with that. But yes, there is a lot of hype around here for Austin Reaves, to finally get back to your original question.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of hype going into this week. It's exciting times with football finally here. I know Arkansas State's ready to go to work against someone else besides themselves, and OU is the same. So should be exciting. I appreciate you, Kara, taking time to join us here today. So again, Kara Richey from The Ticket, covering Arkansas State. Appreciate you taking time, Kara.
Guys, thank you so much for the invites, and hey, happy game week. We'll see you.
Hey, that's right. See you
All right,
later.
we'll see you.